95.1 FM, The Light, and its management. And now, to address the legal concerns of our community, AM 1310 The Light presents Legally Speaking. Here is today's host.
All right, in 3, 2, and 1.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Welcome to our show today. We have our superstar panel again back in the studio today. We have attorney Milton from LA, famously represented Rodney King, one of the instrumental cases in police misconduct in American history. And we got our Craig research analyst, master's in tax, cyber security expert, research analyst, attorney Vanita Banks, and live from Chicago. Before I get started today, in Chicago, they have a new mayor. And, I was looking at Brandon Johnson's pitch. He pledged to tackle crime and all the city's ill. And I was thinking to myself, that would be the almost religious intervention to solve the problem that he just undertook by becoming mayor. Attorney Banks, will he be able to put a dent in that crime problem in Chicago and the other issues they're having?
Good morning, Attorney Lee, and thanks so much for having me. As you know, Mayor Brandon Johnson was recently sworn in as the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago, and he has some immediate challenges. But on day one, he signed his first executive orders, which really highlighted what his immediate priorities are. Of course, he's focused on safety and combating crime in the city of Chicago. Homelessness is one of his priorities as well. And so on day one, he announced a day one plan for public safety, and his 3 executive orders included elevating youth employment and establishing new deputy mayors for several of his priorities, including a deputy mayor for community safety, for labor relations, and also a deputy mayor for immigrant, migrant, and refugee rights. He's focused on eradicating the root causes of crime, and he also announced his plans for investing in the employment of young people. So he has a lot of challenges, and he has articulated his plan. His executive order on community safety it reaffirmed the mayor's direct supervision of the police superintendent. And he has signaled to immediately work on several public safety initiatives. Again, he announced his day one plan for public safety, which includes recruiting 200 new detectives, undertaking a full efficiency audit, and strengthening the enforcement of red flag laws, and establishing a CTA violence intervention program, and a new Chicago Police Department anti-gun trafficker initiative.
Whoa.
It's a full plate.
Wow, man. Wow. That's a very ambitious plan, but I really respect the fact that that shows leadership. Leadership on these issues is paramount to the citizens of Chicago. Public safety, I know, is a big issue, but there are so many issues that face in the Windy City, and I'm glad that this mayor apparently has got his pulse on the city in trying to address the issue. I saw that he's trying to focus on teen hirings and things like that. And I think that's critical. We can get all the kids to working, and a lot of time the teenagers, some are bad, but if they're all working, that would certainly be reduction in crime. So I'm really impressed with that. So thank you for giving that report. Now we got the same thing in LA though, Counselor. In LA, your mayor is saying that we solved the homeless problem I saw by these hotels. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Is that working?
She's addressing, am I on?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed with all of these attempts by our new leaders, our mayors, our presidents, everybody. They're addressing these problems, but I haven't seen anybody eradicate a problem yet, Nate. But it's good intentions. I hope that Mayor Bass out here in Los Angeles is successful in lessening the homeless problem. But I was visiting in Connecticut 2 weeks ago, and as cold as it get in Connecticut, they have a homeless problem. Chicago has a homeless problem. Hawaii has a homeless problem. So I don't know if anyone is going to do a quick sweep and solve this homeless problem. That's my thoughts on that.
Well, I was down in Florida and I see what appears to be a lot of homeless people on the street. They're trying to sell stuff, everywhere I went. But they have a governor who's running for president who ignores their population, and somehow it doesn't get covered. He get accolades for how he handled COVID, and what they did was suppress the numbers. People were dying every day. I was down there, every hospital was overfilled with COVID people. And so you have these leaders somehow get elevated to national prominence and deal with racial demagoguery and somehow become the second leading candidate in the Republican Party for president. And so I'm glad that these politicians are addressing real issue. And I'm getting sick of them talking about woke and things like that. And they don't do things to look out for the common citizen. And that's what I'm disturbed with. But I'm glad to see that these two mayors, African-American, are addressing these issues. I'm sorry, I cut you off. What you saying, sir?
No, I agree with you. I'm impressed with the language. I'm impressed with, if we were at a dinner table, we would have to bring in an extra table for the mayor of Chicago, all the things that he's got on the table, and, God bless him, but he's going to be a busy man addressing all of the problems in Chicago unless Ms. Banks come out and volunteer and help him. He's got a lot of things to do in Chicago. And Mayor Bass has a lot of things to do out here in LA. So
and these are typical.
They're saying that they're going to bring in another 1,000 cops here in LA. I don't know what that's going to be for. Crime has gone down 4%, I think it is, in Los Angeles. So why do we need more cops? Maybe we need some programs to help the people. I don't know the answer. I'm just being critical, but good luck.
I really applaud the focus of Mayor Johnson on boosting youth employment and investing in our youth. In almost every time that I hear him speak, he mentions youth and investment in our youth. And the executive order instructs the mayor's office staff to coordinate year-round youth employment and enrichment activities among Chicago agencies and city departments, and of course in collaboration with companies and nonprofit organizations. And so he's got a lot on his plate. There's a lot to do. His challenges are similar to those of other urban large cities, including LA, as we've discussed, in New York and Florida as well. And so, but he's focused on addressing these challenges.
Well, Vanita, I've lived a long life, I think, and I've seen the the fanfare and the promises made to people by various leaders. And after the lights go out on the attention of the first few days, things get back to normal. So I'm hoping that he fulfilled these promises that he has the people expecting.
Mr. Metcalf, you have a comment?
Hello, Nate.
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
All right, brother Metcalf here.
You can call in at 833-653-3529, 833-653-3529. That'll allow you live access to our Zoom account. Go ahead, sir. What's your question?
Yeah, brother Metcalf here, brother, and thanks for taking my call. A couple of things here. Number one, I'd like to, for attorney Grimes to answer. Read that scathing report in the LA Times last week about the sheriff out in LA wanting all the officers to turn themselves in who have those gang tattoos on that belong to those gang cops out there. We've got gangs of cops around this country. People don't want to address it. Of course, Fox News and those people who want to be blind don't want to address it. But I'd like you to address that. I see some of them have come forward, but they say the numbers are vast. And so what do you think about him calling that out? And then number two, I want to give credit. Nate, we have a public that thinks that everything that happens is your fault. You do it all wrong. It's your choice. Well, I want to applaud Miss Robin Europe, this black woman who just won an $11 million case in New York against Equinox Fitness Center for racial discrimination, retaliation. She was getting horrible treatment out there. So we want to lift Miss, and there was another gentleman too, but they didn't give his identity. We want to lift up Miss Robin Europe and those who continue to fight against the things that we are seeing done to them. She didn't do anything wrong but complain about not being given promotions and stuff that she was duly fitted for. They fired her. She sued. She won. What about Trump? Nate, this is for you. Trump trying to end birthright citizenship, which is a violation of the 14th Amendment. He know he can't do it. You have to have a constitutional amendment, but he's floating the idea of ending birthright citizenship. Talked about that. And then Attorney Banks, Mayor Johnson talked about getting rid of those pesky red light speed cameras that caught me a few years ago up there. I didn't get a ticket. I got a warning. But we know from Northwestern research that those cameras are not even with the NTSB properly. The time is not right. And so I'm hoping he does that because we know it affects blacks mostly when everybody speeds the same, but it definitely disproportionately affects black people up there. So I hope he takes care of that. I know that was a lot of through it, you guys, but thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Well, I don't see your problem with having sheriff deputies or police officers having their own inner gang groups, social groups, tattoos with the skull and a Nazi helmet and a gun in the tattoo. I don't know, that symbolizes and signifies peace to their fellow man, I would assume. So I don't know what the problem that the police department is having with these guys having their own group with those types of tattoos on them, numbered tattoos as to what number you are to get that tattoo. I don't know what you have to do for that tattoo. It's almost like a secret society. I don't think it's open to everybody's involvement like the Klan was back in the 1920s in Indianapolis. That I don't know how Nate survived Indianapolis from what I read about the survival and the rising of the Klan in Indianapolis in 1920, but I won't get off track. I am somewhat concerned seriously about these tattooed officers and their secret gangs, the executioners, the gladiators. All my information is that when you have a gang, then you got separate rules from the other people. And if they got I understand they got up to 8 different gangs in the sheriff's department. The ones that are highlighted is the gladiators and the executioners. I mean, think about the name. They're not called the peaceniks or the hippies. They're called the gladiators and the executioners. What do you have to do to become a member of that group?
One of our colleagues exposed these tattooed gangs in the LA Police Department, John Sweeney. And I think it would be a great idea to have John come on and talk about exactly how he exposed these gangs. And these gangs, as we know, Attorney Grimes, they have wreaked horrific brutality on Black communities over the years as well. And so I was reading that there's a litigation this week that's commenced with respect to these tattooed gangs.
Yes, there's a lawsuit going on where the one man, Waldy, W-A-L-D-I-E, is claiming that he was denied promotion to be a captain of the Compton station, which is a branch of the sheriff's department, because he wouldn't promote and elevate some people under him who were members of the Gladiators. It's a conflict about what these gangs are doing. And allegedly, there was a work slowdown for months or years because he wouldn't promote members of another gang in the sheriff's department. It's kind of confusing because they accuse each other of different unethical conduct, but it's problematic for law enforcement.
Well, the second issue that he talked about, he addressed to me, dealt with the issue of birthright citizenship in the United States. And that's a good subject that Imhotep raised, but basically what he's talking about, in the United States of America, citizenship can be acquired by birthright in two situations. One, by virtue of the person birthed within the United States territory, or two, because one or both the parents are a U.S. citizen. Birthright citizenship contrasts with citizenship acquired in other ways, such as naturalization. But the way this law came about was the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. As I recall, that was back in about 1868. And that was an important legislation because of a case called Dred Scott versus Sanford. That was an 1857 U.S. Supreme Court decision that denied citizenship to African Americans. So the slaves weren't treated as citizens, but the 14th Amendment said that the slave, former slave, are a citizen. And so that was an important decision. So this idea of birthright citizenship represent a radical departure from what we've known as America for the last century. And now we're seeing politicians openly espouse what we deemed was racist views. We've seen a guy running for a Republican presidential candidate use the term woke. And so you have to be careful as American citizens because these dog whistles are really very extreme racist views. So when you look at the source of what they're talking about, it goes back to African American citizens. Because we were slaves, we were not deemed citizen under Dred Scott decision. So when they're saying that they want to abrogate citizenship, well, that just is not a one-way ordeal. It applies to African Americans. That's where the law was changed because of Blacks who were slaves. And so don't forget about that. I think that Imhotep made a good point. So when a presidential candidate say we want to get rid of birthright citizenship, that's idiotic because you got to remember, in the United States of America, the people that actually live here were Native American. They weren't white or Black, they were Native American, they were Indians. And so we came over, we took over the country. And so in reality, the only people that were actually born here were them. And so, but be careful when you hear these politicians use these terms such as woke and birthright citizenship. They're talking about you. a lot of people in our audience. And that's my comment on this issue. But this issue, Attorney Banks and Grime, it irks me because I keep hearing these politicians articulate these issues like woke and things like that. And so that struck a nerve with me because I'm tired of hearing it when what we're seeing is a radical departure from the growth we've seen in our country. And we put these terms together and they become normalized, but they're very racist terms. They're using woke as a bad thing, and woke mean that we don't get slaughtered or mutilated because of white supremacists. Now all of a sudden it's bad to be woke or white. And so I don't get it. And that's my comment on that issue. But having said that, the other issue that we're supposed to deal with today, we have a mayor's election here also in Indianapolis this year. And one of the big issues in all the major cities in America, as you know, it dealt with the issue of gun violence. And in our city, we have a person who's running for mayor, who's a member of NRA. And in our state, in Indiana, we have what is called an open carry law. So any lunatic now could go out and get a gun. And so we see an increase in gun death because we have relaxed laws that allow access for everyone to own a gun. Dumb idea. So we have gun shows that don't do background check. And so you can go to a gun show and buy a gun without any verification. And so we wonder why we have such an increase in violent crime. Well, the issue is that we have such a high degree or high number of weapons in the community. And so in Chicago, when Attorney Banks was talking about this new mayor, he's got some great idea, but unless they can do something about the proliferation of guns, you're still going to see violence, increase in homicide, mass shooting, mass murders, until we tackle this issue about this deluge of guns that come into our community. But one of the other issues that was trading this week, and Attorney Banks brought out, was we avoided a collapse of the American economy, Attorney Banks. The debt ceiling was raised. So historically speaking, back in 1929, as you recall, we had the market crash and the budget started off at zero. The stories I'm told is J.P. Morgan loaned money to the federal government to get it back started. Well, the budget deficit for almost a century got to 21 trillion. Then Donald Trump became president. In 42 months, it went to $28 trillion. 28 trillion. And so now we had this problem because the United States have a debt ceiling. And what happened this week, Attorney Banks? You followed that story about the debt ceiling?
Yes, after weeks of holding the American economy hostage, Kevin McCarthy and Congress ultimately passed a bill to prevent America's. This would have been the first ever intentional default. And we know, and you have on several prior shows, Attorney Lee pointed out that you've pointed out the Trump administration, but the Bush and Trump administration added $10 trillion to the debt. And their administrations are responsible for 57% of the increase in the debt ratio since 2001. And so what we saw was that the Biden administration has already, in its first 2 years, already cut the deficit, and the deficit will be cut by even more, as we move forward. As we mentioned, the deficit had increased every year, and $8 trillion had been added to the national debt under the Trump administration. This bill, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is scheduled to be signed by the president today, is not perfect. There are new mandatory work requirements for the SNAP program, which will cause food insecurity for many Americans. The cuts in IRS funding will make it easier for wealthy people to escape fair taxes. But not passing this bill would have tanked our economy. It would have cost millions of jobs. It would have shattered many businesses and really endangered retirement savings of middle-class citizens in the United States. And President Biden really showed his skill in rejecting the most extreme proposals. There was a proposal of a 22% cut for funding for education, childcare, and public safety. He safeguarded, because this was on the table in the negotiations, cuts in the historic investments in clean energy and infrastructure. He also protected, and there won't be any cuts in Social Security or Medicare, Medicaid. Veterans will receive additional funding. And so very shrewdly and skillfully, President Biden brokered a bipartisan vote on this bill earlier this week, and we can all now breathe a sign of relief.
How much credit do you give to the new speaker, Mr. McCarthy, Vanita, for passing this bill, or was it Biden?
I think I'm going to go with what Biden stated in his remarks to the American people last night. He stated that both sides negotiated in good faith. He complimented Speaker McCarthy. I think we saw McCarthy, who
Surprises.
who they're saying, has long been, quote, underestimated, but he showed his skill, I believe, and interested in your thoughts on holding this far right prong of the party in check. They were essentially deemed powerless as this deal was being brokered. What do you think?
And I was just curious into your analysis of it from what I read, that's all.
I thought that instead of four rights, I have another terminology that I think is more appropriate: lunatics. See, I thought.
Well, I thought he was a lunatic, but he seems to be coming around. Is that fair to say or not?
I don't think so. I think that this is a guy who starts investigation to drive down political poll numbers of the opponent. He famously said when Hillary Clinton was running, they created this bogus investigation about Benghazi. So it was a terrible tragedy where a consulate was attacked. You had some Americans that were murdered by some insurrectionists. Sounds familiar, I guess. Well, somehow they did a multi-year investigation, semi-accused the then Secretary of State of allowing the Americans to be killed. They ignored the fact that they prevented the budgetary increase that would have warranted the payment of additional guards at the embassy. But so this is the same guy that would do things like that for political. And then what was interesting, what it took about 15 votes for him to become speaker by the Republicans. It was something bizarre. I can't remember the number, but it was a lot of drama that went on. And he made all kind of concessions to these lunatic within his party. And I thought that he's probably the weakest speaker we've ever had.
They're giving him a lot of kudos for his passion, aren't they?
Well, it goes both ways. If the debt limit, let's make sure we understand that the debt limit is the total amount of money that the United States government is authorized to borrow to pay for its existing bills. So this is money, we're paying a debt that we've already spent. So if he didn't vote for this, what would have occurred is that Congress themselves would have lost money. They would have lost their staff. So when you don't have the ability to borrow money, well, they can't pay Congress. So all those staff members are laid off. So you have the Speaker of the House with this big staff, they go down to zero. And so a lot of people don't realize that when you cut off the ability to pay bills, that includes paying salary for federal workers. And I think that he had to come to realization that despite the lunatics within his caucus, that maybe this is a terrible idea, not just for the national economy that would have been catastrophic, but also for Congress themselves. They won't have money to pay their own bills. And so how could the Congress operate? So you got this position, all of a sudden you have no staff, so you got a position without staff, and it means nothing. And so I think that he came to realization that this was a bad idea, even for the Republicans in Congress. And that's my analysis on it.
Okay.
And but in any event, we're looking for the president to sign that today. And Attorney Banks also brought out important thing. The big news story this week was the recording by the former president as it relates to the Federal Records Act. What do you find out about that, Attorney Banks? I lost her.
Well, I'm here. Yes, this week the big story, or the continuation of the story relative to our former president taking classified documents to his home. And what he's been saying arrogantly, as usual, is that I have the right, basically says I have the right, he said, I have the right to do whatever I want with those documents, right? And so he was recently recorded stating that he actually possessed a classified document, which talked about, I believe, a potential US attack on Iran. And so he says that he could declassify documents even just by thinking of them, right? And he's also relying on the Presidential Records Act to state that that he can't be criminally prosecuted for any violations because there's no such ability or no right under that particular act. But we also saw where Vice President Pence was, that investigation ended without prosecuting him. He had initially stated in an interview that he had not taken any classified documents, but a search of his home indicated that that was not true. But he immediately apologized and said it was a mistake. And so as a result, the investigation with respect to him was closed. But you'll recall that with respect to President Trump, he'd been requested to return the documents. He had been subpoenaed to return the documents. There'd been haggling back and forth for months and months. And then finally, after total lack of cooperation with respect to these top secret classified documents, his home was ultimately searched.
Well, I think that we need to put this in the right context. Why does it matter that classified documents are floating around? Here's why it matters, so we put this in the right perspective. Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer enforcer who turned on him, or vice versa, Trump turned on him, or vice versa. Michael Cohen ended up going to prison for a series of things, including hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Well, Michael Cohen, I saw him on TV say that one of the reasons he took these documents, he could use that as leverage to avoid criminal prosecution. So in other words, the secrets of the United States are held by the president during his term in office. So this information also represents the safety and security of the United States of America. Confidential records in the wrong hand could eradicate the security mechanism that protects us from invasion from near and afar. So having possession of this give the person who controls it the ability to, in theory, blackmail the United States. And that was the theory advanced by Michael Cohen. It's a terrible thought process that one person could actually hold the United States of America as a hostage, but that's what was advocated. And of course, I don't have any personality in it stuff. It's just what he had said. So I thought it was a big deal in the sense that, yes, the president must have access to the records, but they should be cared for. And mistakes are made by all the people. I noticed that they never said Obama had any classified records, which was kind of, different. And they only said that Pence, Trump, and then they also said Biden had some classified records at one of his offices that he had. So I think it's possible when you are in those positions, it's obvious that the president or the vice president don't actually pack up anything. They have staff people to do that. And so I don't, hold them responsible for things getting packed up and moved out because I was watching this film. They showed how they did a transition in power, and they had a moving company come in, move everything out of the White House, and that same day they move everything in for the new incoming president. They do that all while they're doing the inauguration ceremony. It's an amazing thing. And so with that in mind, that told me that the president don't really pack up anything. They have staff to do that. So the point is that once they recognize that they have these records, then all they do is turn them back in. No harm, no foul. But what I read, Attorney Banks, is that there was an active effort, it seemed like, to conceal this evidence. And that was troubling. And what was the purpose of holding on to confidential records since you're no longer the president? What are you going to do with it?
Great questions, Attorney Lee. And, this whole experience has just suggested to me that there really needs to be an analysis of the record retention policies related to these classified records, because, we heard of a plethora of situations with Vice President Pence, and when President Biden was vice president, there were documents found in his office, as well. And so it just suggests to me that there really needs to be some reform of or attention to those policies, at a national level.
Wow.
Obama didn't make that mistake. Does it have anything to do with coming from privilege, maybe, and used to doing what you want to do and not being punished for it, as opposed to maybe Obama realized that if he had done something like that, he probably would have been tarred and feathered or in jail? I don't know. I'm just thinking about that as you were talking, Nate.
It's
well,
important.
I'm quoting statements made by former President Trump. I have the right to do whatever I want.
Right. That's
he
privilege.
stated with respect to those records. So if that doesn't answer your question, Attorney Grimes. I don't know what does, right? But now his attorneys want to sit down with the DOJ as a result of this recording last week and have a conversation, right?
Wow. Well, the next story that was brought to my attention by Attorney Banks had to deal with artificial intelligence. And now I saw the first report last night. Last night, there was a report that most people miss had to do with artificial intelligence, and specifically companies like ChatGPT. They were saying that in the last month, we lost 3,900 jobs in America because of artificial intelligence. They predict that artificial intelligence will eliminate 300 million full-time jobs worldwide over the next 10 years. So I think that this is an area that's starting off the same manner in which the coronavirus. We had this deadly disease process that took out the whole world and caused millions of deaths. And it started off as a footnote and then became the story of the day. Every day we woke up during the pandemic, we were glued to TV to find out how many people died that the day before, 3,000, 4,000, whatever day there were thousands of people dying. So now we have this new threat that suddenly ripened into existence that could wipe out millions of jobs, artificial intelligence. And that's something that we have to spend more time on because it's going to be something that's going to affect, look like everybody in America pretty soon. Have either of you been following the story about AI, artificial intelligence?
No, I have not. I'm interested in what Ms. Banks has to say about it.
Well, I've been following artificial intelligence for a long time, and artificial intelligence basically, and machine learning, you'll hear those terms, they leverage computer systems and machines to really mimic problem solving and decision-making capabilities of, human beings. And so, and it's not new, it dates back to, you can go back to, the Greek mythology. Talks in terms of, artificial, intelligence. And I've been reading a lot about it currently. And Alan Turing, who is known as the father of computer science, back in the 1950s, he wrote an article entitled, "Can Machines Think?" And it's a great article, and I would suggest it for anyone that's interested in this technology. But it's taking these really huge data sets, and it's a process of utilizing these huge data sets to analyze and process and report, on data, right? And so what we've heard about this week is this ChatGPT function. And I don't know if you heard, Attorney Grimes and Lee, but a New York lawyer is subject to be sanctioned because he cited fake cases that were generated by this technology in his legal brief. He cited 6 fake cases with fake briefs. This is an experienced attorney, 30 years of experience, and he used these, prompt-driven chatbots to create his brief with these fake cases. And the attorney now, he's saying he regrets using artificial intelligence to supplement his research. We also saw where there was this fake picture of an explosion at the Pentagon. And so we're going to be hearing a lot about the benefits and negatives of artificial intelligence and machine learning. You know, one of the things that is always stated, Attorney Lee, to your point about jobs, is that yes, certain jobs will be threatened. The same was true of the Industrial Revolution, you know, as well. And so as we see these advancements in technology, yes, certain roles, you know, accountant roles, architectural roles, many roles may be eliminated, but new jobs and roles will be created as well. And so we've seen this week the CEOs of these big companies that have created this technology step up and actually beg for regulation. This technology, and one of the questions is whether or not the technology has the potential of acting autonomously, and that is, you know, creating its own consciousness, right? And there are concerns about potential proliferation of misinformation as a result of these new technologies. Also a big concern about bias as well. There are facial recognition technologies that have been shown to be inaccurate at identifying Black faces, resulting in wrongful arrest. And so we know that the European Union has really, really strong global data protection laws that the United States, if they are transacting business in the EU, is governed by as well. They have an artificial intelligence bill, which would require classification of these systems based on the risk and would require the imposition of safeguards and data protection standards and prohibit predictive policing algorithms and mass surveillance. Let me stop.
As you were talking, Vanita, you finished, Vanita?
Yes.
Okay, as you were talking, I was reminded of having read recently, now that you talk, about the putting together of a speech about artificial intelligence, but it didn't meet the full requirement of human-made speech, but it was a speech that was acceptable to a degree. This is a couple of weeks ago I read about that. I've also read or heard about that some people believe that an automobile is safer being driven by artificial intelligence as opposed to human being. Is part of this dealing with, I swore that Charles Barkley had a kid and he didn't tell us about, on that commercial that's done with the boy, with the somebody that was created that looks just like his descendant. And it's, I won't say it's scary, but it's quite concerning what can be done with this science, with this technology. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in the mix.
Attorney Banks, what I'm concerned about is that this new technology, although it's great if used correctly, but it has some sinister type aspect that could result in mass wars even. You could fake a killing or murder, you could fake an atomic explosion, you can make it look so real. And this venture of artificial intelligence is frightening. In one respect, it's just phenomenal because it's a tool that could be very helpful. But I'm afraid of the sinister type uses of this type of intelligence. It's just mind-blowing to me.
Well, old man, you're just going to have to get used to, we got to do it like we've done everything else, eliminate the negative and just protect and promote the good from it, because here we come.
Exactly. And there was a 22-word, I wish I had it in front of me, statement that was made by several CEOs of and creators of this, technology. And there was a reference to your point, Attorney Lee, that from the negative perspective, that there's a potential threat to human existence, with this potentially self-accelerating technology. And of course, there are a number of doomsday scenarios that you have referenced as well. And then, of course, these companies may ultimately advocate for, quote, self-regulation. And that's scary because you have a small number of corporate folks, right, regulating this for the entire, world. And the other thing to keep in mind is that China and Russia, they're way ahead of us, in this regard. But most of us deal with artificial intelligence every day. If you have a Netflix account, for example, or if you call a customer service line, you're in many cases dealing with a, quote, chat bot, they call them. And so one of the things that in terms of regulation is that people have the right to know whether they're dealing with a human person versus a computer, right? And on the positive perspective, artificial intelligence has determined the structure of around 200 million proteins. And so this technology has the potential to revolutionize medical research and the potential to lead to, cures for diseases, because this technology, again, has determined the shape of almost all, proteins. And by simply enabling you to essentially Google search. But for example, when we're creating Word documents, the auto complete feature, you'll start typing a word, and on your text or Word document, you may type BI, and then it will, based on machine learning, provide you with, if it's BI, it'll give you big, right? BIG. So those are examples of artificial intelligence or machine learning, potentially very destructive in the wrong hands. And that's why we need to stay all over this technology, because of the potential for misinformation, and they call it deep fakes, for example, but much more to follow.
Let me just put the point out there. I don't want to leave Nate hanging by himself. I'm scared too, Nate, and I easily call you the old man. I'm the old man too, but I just know we got to deal with it.
Well, I like to thank our audience for listening to us today. We ran out of time, but Attorney Banks made some interesting points, and this is a story that we have to follow on an ongoing basis for future shows, because this is this may evolve sort of like the coronavirus is. This AI is something that could just take over the country, and that's something that we have to keep our eye on. So thank you, audience, for listening to us. Join us next week if we have another exciting show, and thank you, our special guests who call in. Thank you, and have a blessed day, everyone.